In 2005, the New York Times obtained a 2,000-page United States Army investigatory report concerning the homicides of 2 unarmed civilian Afghan prisoners by U.S. military personnel in December 2002 at the Bagram Theater Internment Facility in Bagram, Afghanistan, and general treatment of prisoners. The 2 prisoners, Habibullah and Dilawar, were repeatedly chained to the ceiling and beaten, resulting in their deaths. Military coroners ruled that both the prisoners' deaths were homicides. Autopsies revealed severe trauma to both prisoners' legs, describing the trauma as comparable to being run over by a bus. 7 soldiers were charged in 2005. Biography. Family and early life. Aafia Siddiqui was born in Karachi, Pakistan, to Muhammad Saleh Siddiqui, a British-trained neurosurgeon, and Ismet, an Islamic teacher, social worker, and charity volunteer. She belongs to the Urdu-speaking Muhajir, Deobandi community of Karachi. She was raised in an observant Muslim household, although her parents combined devotional Islam with their resolve to understand and use technological advances in science. Ismet Siddiqui was prominent in political and religious circles, teaching classes on Islam wherever she lived, founding a united Islamic organization, and serving as a member of Pakistan's parliament. Her support for strict Islam in the face of feminist opposition to his Hudud ordinances drew the attention of General Muhammad Zia-ul-Haq, who appointed her to a Zakat council. Siddiqui is the youngest of 3 siblings. Her brother, Muhammad, studied to become an architect in Houston, Texas, while her sister, Fauzia, is a Harvard-trained neurologist who worked at Sinai Hospital in Baltimore and taught at Johns Hopkins University before she returned to Pakistan. Aafia attended school in Zambia until the age of 8 and finished her primary and secondary schooling in Karachi. Undergraduate education. Siddiqui moved to Houston, Texas, U.S. on a student visa in 1990, joining her brother who was studying architecture. She attended the University of Houston, where friends and family described her interests as limited to religion and schoolwork. She avoided movies, novels, and television, except for the news. After 3 semesters, she transferred to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. In 1992, as a sophomore, Siddiqui won a $5,000 Carol L. Wilson Award for her research proposal Islamization in Pakistan and its Effects on Women. She returned to Pakistan to interview architects of the Islamization and the Hudud laws, including Taqi Usmani, the spiritual advisor to her family. As a junior, she received a $1,200 City Days Fellowship through MIT's program to help clean up Cambridge elementary school playgrounds. While she initially had a triple major in biology, anthropology, and archaeology at MIT, she graduated in 1995 with a BS in biology. At MIT, Siddiqui lived in the all-female McCormick Hall. She remained active in charity work and proselytizing. Her fellow MIT students described her as being religious, which was not unusual at the time, but not a fundamentalist, one of them saying that she was just nice and soft-spoken. She joined the Muslim Students Association, and a fellow Pakistani recalls her recruiting for association meetings and distributing pamphlets. Siddiqui began doing volunteer work for the Al-Kifa Refugee Center after returning from Pakistan. Al-Kifa included members who assassinated Jewish ultranationalist Meir Kahane and helped Ramzi Youssef with the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. She was known for her effectiveness in shaming audiences into contributing to jihad, and the only woman known to have regularly raised money for Al-Kifa. Through the student association she met several committed Islamists, including Suhail Layer, its imam, who had publicly advocated Islamization and jihad before 9/11. Journalist Deborah Scroggins suggested that through the association's contacts Siddiqui may have been drawn into the world of terrorism. At MIT, several of the MSA's most active members had fallen under the spell of Abdullah Azzam, a Muslim brother who was Osama bin Laden's mentor. Had established the Al-Kiffa Refugee Center to function as its worldwide recruiting post, propaganda office, and fundraising center for the Mujahideen fighting in Afghanistan. It would become the nucleus of the Al-Qaeda organization. Aafia's commitment to Al-Kiffa showed no sign of dimming when the connection between its Jersey City branch and the World Trade Center bombing became apparent. When the Pakistani government helped the U.S. arrest and extradite Ramzi Youssef for his role in the bombing, an outraged Siddiqui circulated the announcement with a scornful note deriding Pakistan for officially joining the typical gang of our contemporary Muslim governments, closing her email with a quote from the Quran warning Muslims not to take Jews and Christians as friends. She wrote 3 guides for teaching Islam, expressing the hope in one, that our humble effort continues, and more people come to the of Allah until America becomes a Muslim land. She also took a 12-hour pistol training course at the Braintree Rifle and Pistol Club, mailed U.S. military manuals to Pakistan, and moved from her apartment after the FBI agents visited the university looking for her. Marriage, graduate school, and work. In 1995, she agreed to a marriage arranged by her mother to Karachi-born anesthesiologist Amjad Mohammed Khan, just out of medical school and whom she had never seen. The marriage ceremony was conducted over the telephone. Khan then came to the U.S., and the couple lived first in Lexington, Massachusetts, and then in the Mission Hill neighborhood of Roxbury, Boston, where he worked as an anesthesiologist at Brigham and Women's Hospital. She gave birth to a son, Muhammad Ahmed, in 1996, and to a daughter, Maryam Binti Muhammad, in 1998. Siddiqui studied cognitive neuroscience at Brandeis University. In early 1999, while she was a graduate student, she taught the General Biology Laboratory course. She received her PhD in 2001 after completing her dissertation on learning through imitation, separating the components of imitation. She co-authored a journal article on selective learning that was published in 2003. One incident that caused controversy was her presentation of a paper on fetal alcohol syndrome, where she concluded that science showed why God had forbidden alcohol in the Quran. When told by some teachers this was inappropriate, she complained bitterly of discrimination to the Associate Dean of Graduate Studies, threatening to open a can of worms. After receiving her PhD, she told one of her advisors she planned to devote herself to her family rather than a career. She began translating biographies of Arab Afghan Shaheed written by Abdullah Yusuf Azzam, and became more strict in her religion, wearing a niqab black veil that covered everything but her eyes, and avoiding any music, even background music, at science exhibits. In 1999, while living in Boston, Siddiqui founded the Institute of Islamic Research and Teaching as a non-profit organization. She was the organization's president, her husband's treasurer, and her sister's resident agent. She attended a mosque outside the city where she stored copies of the Quran and other Islamic literature for distribution. She also co-founded the Dawah Resource Center, which offered faith-based services to prison inmates. Divorce, Al-Qaeda allegations, and remarriage. Tensions began to arise in her marriage, which, according to Siddiqui's husband Khan, was caused by her overwhelming devotion to activism and jihad. Siddiqui temporarily moved away from her husband after he threw a baby bottle at her that required a visit to the emergency room to stitch up her lip. In the summer of 2001, the couple moved to Malden, Massachusetts. According to Khan, after the 9/11 attacks, Siddiqui was adamant that the family leave the U.S., saying that their lives were in danger if they remained. Once back in Pakistan, Siddiqui demanded that the family move to the border with Afghanistan and Khan work as a medic to help the Taliban Mujahideen in their fight against America. Khan was reluctant to disobey his parents, who opposed this move, and uncertain if he had reached the stature traditionally thought necessary to wage jihad. Siddiqui agreed to return to him in the US in January 2002 after he agreed to her conditions, including that he join her in Islamic activities. She began homeschooling her children. By this point, the FBI was questioning Siddiqui's former professors and other associates. In May 2002, the FBI began questioning Siddiqui and her husband regarding their purchase over the internet of $10,000 worth of night vision equipment, body armor, and military manuals, including The Anarchist's Arsenal, Fugitive, Advanced Fugitive, and How to Make C4. Khan claimed that these were for hunting and camping expeditions. He later told authorities he purchased them to please Siddiqui. The couple made an appointment to talk to the FBI again in a few weeks, but, according to Khan, Siddiqui insisted the family leave for Pakistan, and on June 26, 2002, the couple and their children returned to Karachi. In August 2002, Khan alleged that Siddiqui was abusive and manipulative throughout their 7 years of marriage. He suspected she was involved in extremist activities. Khan went to Siddiqui's parents' home, announced his intention to divorce her, and argued with her father. Shortly after, Siddiqui's father died of a heart attack, an event blamed on Khan and the marriage difficulties by his ex-in-laws, further poisoning his relations with them. In September 2002, Siddiqui gave birth to Suleiman, the last of their 3 children. Following an attempted and failed reconciliation and signing of a divorce document shortly after, the couple never met each other again. The couple's divorce was finalized on October 21, 2002. According to her statements to the FBI, it was at this point that her connections with Al-Qaeda began in earnest. In February 2003, Siddiqui married Ammar al-Baluchi, an accused Al-Qaeda member and a nephew of Al-Qaeda leader Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, in Karachi. While her family denies she married al-Baluchi, Pakistani and U.S. intelligence sources, a psychologist for the defense during her 2009 trial, and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's family all confirm that the marriage took place. The marriage lasted only a couple of months. According to one of KSM's uncles, Mohammed Hussein, al-Baluchi became alienated with Siddiqui's liberal way of life. Siddiqui told the FBI that al-Baluchi divorced her after he was arrested. Alleged conspiring with KSM. Blood diamond allegations ruled out. Disappearance. Aware that the FBI wanted her for questioning, she left her parents' house March 30, 2003 with her 3 children. According to her parents, she was going to go to Islamabad to visit her uncle but never arrived. Around March 25, the FBI put out a worldwide alert for Aafia and her ex-husband. Siddiqui's and her children's whereabouts and activities from March 2003 to July 2008 are a matter of dispute. Her supporters and the Pakistani government claim she was held as a prisoner by the U.S. The U.S. government and others suggest she went into hiding with KSM's al-Baluchi family. Starting March 29, a confusing series of reports and denials of her arrest and detention appeared in Pakistan and the U.S. On April 1, 2003, local newspapers reported and Pakistan Interior Ministry confirmed that a woman had been taken into custody on terrorism charges. The Boston Globe described sketchy Pakistani news reports saying she had been detained for questioning by Pakistani authorities and the FBI. However, a couple of days later, both the Pakistan government and the FBI publicly stated they were uninvolved in her disappearance. Her sister Fozia claimed Interior Minister Faisal Saleh Hayat said that her sister had been released and would be returning home shortly. In 2003-04, the FBI and the Pakistani government said Siddiqui was still at large. On May 26, 2004, U.S. Attorney General John Ashcroft held a press conference, described her as among the 7 most wanted al-Qaeda fugitives and a clear and present danger to the U.S. Newsweek reported that she might be the most immediately threatening suspect in the group. 1 day before the announcement, however, The New York Times cited the U.S. Department of Homeland Security saying there were no current risks. American Democrats accused the Bush administration of attempting to divert attention from plummeting poll numbers and to push the failings of the invasion of Iraq off the front pages. After her 2008 reappearance and arrest, Siddiqui told the FBI that she had first gone into hiding with KSM's al-Baluchi clan and worked at the Karachi Institute of Technology in 2005, was in Afghanistan in 2007, and also spent time in Quetta, Pakistan, sheltered by various people. She told the FBI she met with Mufti Abu Lubaba Shah Mansour, and according to the FBI had begun collecting materials on viruses for biological warfare. According to an intelligence official in the Afghan Ministry of the Interior, her son, Ahmed, who was with her when she was arrested, said he and Siddiqui had worked in an office in Pakistan collecting money for poor people. He told Afghan investigators that on August 14, 2008 they had traveled by road from Quetta to Afghanistan. An Afghan intelligence official said he believes that Siddiqui was working with Jaish-e-Mohammed, a Pakistani Islamic Mujahideen military group that fights in Kashmir and Afghanistan. According to her ex-husband Khan, after the global alert for her was issued, Siddiqui went into hiding and worked for Al-Qaeda. During her disappearance, Khan said he saw her at Islamabad airport in April 2003 as she disembarked from a flight with their son. He said he helped Inter-Services Intelligence identify her. He said he again saw her 2 years later, in a Karachi traffic jam. Khan unsuccessfully sought custody of his son Ahmed and said most of the claims of Siddiqui's family in the Pakistani media relating to her and their children were one-sided and largely false. In a signed affidavit, Siddiqui's maternal uncle, Shams ul Hassan Faruqi, stated that on January 22, 2008 she visited him in Islamabad and told him she had been held by Pakistani agencies. Knowing he had worked in Afghanistan and made contact with the Taliban in 1999, she asked for his help to cross into Taliban-controlled Afghanistan where she thought she would be safe. He told her he was no longer in touch with them. He notified his sister, Siddiqui's mother, who came the next day to see her daughter. He said that Siddiqui stayed with them for 2 days. Investigating the disappearance, U.S. journalist Deborah Scroggins reported that GOTV presenter Hamid Mir informed her that friends of Siddiqui believed she had gone underground avoiding the FBI. Scroggins was also warned by Pakistanis with jihadist connections, including Khalid Khawaja, that she might end up like Daniel Pearl if she attempted to find Siddiqui. Ahmed and Siddiqui reappeared in 2008. Afghan authorities handed the boy over to his aunt in Pakistan in September 2008, who has prohibited the press from talking to him. In April 2010, DNA identified a girl as Siddiqui's daughter, Maryam. Alleged kidnapping. Alleged danger. Siddiqui was on the CIA's list of suspected al-Qaeda terrorists it was authorized to kill or capture. According to Rolf Mautlerson of the Counterterrorism Center at the CIA, what set Siddiqui apart from other terrorism suspects was her combination of high intelligence, religious zeal, and years of experience in the United States. So far they have had very few people who have been able to come to the US and thrive. Aafia is different. She knows about US immigration procedures and visas. She knows how to enroll in American educational institutions. She can open bank accounts and transfer money. She knows how things work here. She could have been very useful to them simply for her understanding of the US. While the CIA's sources of information could not determine her exact role in al-Qaeda, he was always in the picture. Connections between her and other people in FBI was looking at surfaced in just about every al-Qaeda investigation with a US angle. She was always on our radar. According to the FBI, In her testimony to them, she had collected materials on viruses for biological warfare, and one of her projects was finding a way to infect America's poultry supplies with an antibody that would allow chickens to pass salmonella on to humans more easily. She later destroyed her work after suspecting Abu Lubab was hoping to double-cross her and turn her into the United States authorities. Arrest in Afghanistan. On the evening of July 17, 2008, a woman was approached by Ghazni province police officers in the city of Ghazni outside the Ghazni governor's compound. She was holding two small bags at her side while crouching on the ground. This aroused the officers' suspicion, raising concerns that she might be concealing a bomb under her burqa. Previously, a shopkeeper had noticed a woman in a burqa drawing a map, which is suspicious in Afghanistan where women are generally illiterate. There had also been a report that a Pakistani woman in a burqa with a boy were traveling in Afghanistan urging women to volunteer for suicide bombing. She was accompanied by a young boy that she said was her adopted son. She said her name was Saliha, that she was from Multan in Pakistan, and that the boy's name was Ali Hassan. Discovering that she did not speak either of Afghanistan's main languages, Pashto or Dari, the officers regarded her as suspicious. She told the police she was looking for her husband, needed no help, and started to walk away. She was arrested and taken to the police station for questioning. She initially claimed the boy was her stepson, Ali Hassan. The woman was not identified as Siddiqui until after she was hospitalized and fingerprinted. She subsequently admitted he was her biological son when DNA testing proved the boy to be Ahmed. In a bag she was carrying, the police found a number of documents in English and Urdu describing how to make explosives, chemical weapons, Ebola, dirty bombs, and radiological agents, as well as the mortality rates of certain weapons and handwritten notes referring to a mass casualty attack that listed various U.S. locations and landmarks, according to her indictment. The Boston Globe also mentioned one document about a theoretical biological weapon that did not harm children. She also reportedly had documents about American military bases, excerpts from a bomb-making manual, a 1 GB digital media storage device that contained over 500 electronic documents, maps of Ghazni and the provincial governor's compounds and nearby mosques, and photos of members of the Pakistani military. Other notes described various ways to attack enemies, including by destroying reconnaissance drones, using underwater bombs, and using gliders. She also had numerous chemical substances in gel and liquid form that were sealed in bottles and glass jars, according to the later complaint against her, and about 2 pounds of sodium cyanide, a highly toxic poison. U.S. prosecutors later said that sodium cyanide is lethal even when ingested in small doses, and various of the other chemicals she had could be used in explosives. Abdul Ghani, Ghazni's deputy police chief, said she later confessed she had planned a suicide attack against the governor of Ghazni province. Explanation: shooting in Ghazni. There are conflicting accounts of the events following her arrest in Ghazni. American authorities said that 2 FBI agents, a U.S. Army warrant officer, a U.S. Army captain, and their U.S. military interpreters arrived in Ghazni the following day on July 18 to interview Siddiqui at the Afghan National Police facility where she was being held. They reported they congregated in a meeting room that was partitioned by a curtain, but did not realize that Siddiqui was standing unsecured behind the curtain. The warrant officer sat down and put his loaded M4 carbine on the floor by his feet near the curtain. Siddiqui drew back the curtain, picked up the rifle, and pointed it at the captain. I could see the barrel of the rifle, the inner portion of the barrel of the weapon, that indicated to me that it was pointed straight at my head, he said. Then, she was said to have threatened them loudly in English, and yelled, "Get the fuck out of here and may the blood of be on your." The captain dived for cover to his left as she yelled Allah Akbar and fired at least 2 shots at them, missing them. An Afghan interpreter who was seated closest to her tried to disarm her. At that point, the warrant officer returned fire with a 9mm pistol, hitting her in the torso, and one of the interpreters disarmed her. A Justice Department statement said that Siddiqui struck and kicked the officers during the ensuing struggle. She shouted in English that she wanted to kill Americans and then lost consciousness. Siddiqui related a different version of events, according to Pakistani senators who later visited her in jail. She denied touching a gun, shouting, or threatening anyone. She said she stood up to see who was on the other side of the curtain, and that after one of the startled soldiers shouted "She is loose," she was shot. On regaining consciousness, she said someone said we could lose our jobs. Some of the Afghan police offered a third version of the events, telling Reuters that U.S. troops had demanded that she be handed over, disarmed the Afghans when they refused, and then shot Siddiqui mistakenly thinking she was a suicide bomber. Hospital treatment and evaluation. Siddiqui was taken to U.S. military base Bagram Airfield in Afghanistan by helicopter in critical condition. When she arrived at the hospital, she was rated at 3 on the Glasgow Coma Scale, but she underwent surgery without complication. She was hospitalized at the Craig Theatre Joint Hospital, and recovered over the next 2 weeks. According to FBI reports prepared after the operation, Siddiqui repeatedly denied shooting anyone. FBI reports maintained that Siddiqui told a U.S. special agent at the Craig Hospital on or about August 1 that spewing bullets at soldiers is bad, and expressed surprise that she was being treated well. While at the hospital, she was interrogated by an FBI agent every day for 10 days for an average of 8 hours a day. Her testimony was at odds with what Siddiqui later told lawyers and the court about what happened during her disappearance. Supporters complained that she was not Mirandized, nor did she have access to a Pakistani consular official, and that she was in a narcotic state at the time. She later told visiting Pakistani her statements might not look good to the Pakistani public, but she had made them because her children had been threatened. Criminal complaint and trial. In pre-trial activity, defense attorney Elaine Sharp said that the documents and item found on Siddiqui were planted. A government terrorism expert disagreed, stating there were hundreds of pages in her own handwriting. In Pakistan, Siddiqui's sister Fauzia accused the U.S. of raping and torturing her sister and denying her medical treatment. The Pakistan National Assembly passed a unanimous resolution calling for Siddiqui's repatriation. Prior to her trial, Siddiqui said she was innocent of all charges. She maintained she could prove she was innocent but refused to do so in court. On January 11, 2010, Siddiqui told the judge that she would not cooperate with her attorneys and wanted to fire them. She said she did not trust the judge and added, "I'm boycotting the trial, just to let all of you know. There's too many injustices." She then put her head down on the defense table as the prosecution proceeded. Charges. On July 31, 2008, while Siddiqui was still being treated in Afghanistan, she was charged in a sealed criminal complaint in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York with assault with a deadly weapon and with attempting to kill a United States Army captain while engaged in official duties. In total, she was charged on 2 counts of attempted murder of U.S. nationals, officers, and employees, assault with a deadly weapon, carrying and using a firearm, and 3 counts of assault on U.S. officers and employees. Explaining why the U.S. may have chosen to charge her as they did rather than for her alleged terrorism, Bruce Hoffman, professor of security studies at Georgetown University, said, "There's no intelligence data that needs to be introduced, no sources and methods that need to be risked. It's a good old-fashioned crime. It's the equivalent of a 1920s gangster with a Tommy gun." Defense lawyer Sharp expressed skepticism regarding both the terrorism and assault charges. "I think it's interesting that they make all these allegations about the dirty bombs and other items she supposedly had," but they haven't charged her with anything relating to terrorism. I would urge people to consider her as innocent unless the government proves otherwise. Extradition and arraignment. On August 4, 2008, Siddiqui was placed on an FBI jet and flown to New York City after the Afghan government granted extradition to the United States for trial. She refused to appear for her arraignment or attend a hearing in September or meet with visitors. Siddiqui made her first appearance before a judge in a Manhattan courtroom on August 6, 2008, following which she was remanded into custody. Medical treatment and psychological assessments. On August 11, after her counsel maintained that Siddiqui had not seen a doctor since arriving in the U.S. the previous week, U.S. Magistrate Judge Henry B. Pittman ordered that she be examined by a medical doctor within 24 hours. Prosecutors maintained that Siddiqui had received adequate medical care for her gunshot wound but could not confirm whether she had been seen by a doctor or paramedic. The judge postponed her bail hearing until September 3. An examination by a doctor the following day found no visible signs of infection. She also received a CAT scan. Siddiqui was provided care for her wound while incarcerated in the U.S. In September 2008, a prosecutor reported to the court that Siddiqui had refused to be examined by a female doctor, despite the doctor's extensive efforts. On September 9, 2008, she underwent a forced medical exam. In November 2008, forensic psychologist Leslie Powers reported that Siddiqui had been reluctant to allow medical staff to treat her. Her last medical exam had indicated her external wounds no longer required medical dressing and were healing well. A psychiatrist employed by the prosecutor to examine Siddiqui's competence to stand trial, Gregory B. Sothoff, observed in a March 2009 report that Siddiqui frequently verbally and physically refused to allow the medical staff to check her vital signs and weight, attempted to refuse medical care once it was apparent that her wound had largely healed, and refused to take antibiotics. At the same time, Siddiqui claimed to her brother that when she needed medical treatment she did not get it, which Sothoff said he found no support for in his review of documents and interviews with medical and security personnel, nor in his interviews with Siddiqui. Siddiqui's trial was subject to delays, the longest being 6 months to perform psychiatric evaluations. She had been given routine mental health check UPS 10 times in August and 6 times in September. She underwent 3 sets of psychological assessments before trial. Her first psychiatric evaluation diagnosed her with depressive psychosis, and her second evaluation, ordered by the court, revealed chronic depression. Leslie Powers initially determined Siddiqui mentally unfit to stand trial. After reviewing portions of FBI reports, however, she told the pre-trial judge she believed Siddiqui was faking mental illness. In a third set of psychological assessments, more detailed than the previous 2, 3 of 4 psychiatrists concluded that she was malingering and that she behaved normally when she thought the assessors were not looking. One suggested that this was to prevent criminal prosecution and to improve her chances of being returned to Pakistan. In April 2009, Manhattan federal judge Richard Berman held that she may have some mental health issues but was competent to stand trial. While Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and other ghost prisoners had given the Red Cross elaborate descriptions of waterboardings and other tortures they had suffered, government psychiatrist Sally Johnson testified in a pre-trial hearing that Siddiqui had never given anyone, whether her brother, her lawyers, Pakistani senators, or embassy personnel, other visitors, prison staff or psychiatrists, a clear account of any torture or imprisonment. Anti-Semitism. A 3-person defense team was hired by the Pakistani embassy to supplement her 2 existing public defenders, but Siddiqui refused to cooperate with them. She tried to dismiss her lawyers on the grounds that they were Jewish. She said the case against her was a Jewish conspiracy, demanded that no Jews be allowed on the jury, and that all prospective jurors be DNA tested and excluded from the jury at her trial if they have a Zionist or Israeli background. She stated, they are all mad at me. I have a feeling everyone here is them subject to genetic testing. They should be excluded, if you want to be fair." In regard to her comments, Siddiqui's legal team stated that her incarceration had damaged her mind. While at Federal Medical Center, Carswell, she wrote a letter to the warden to give to President Obama, asserting, "Study the history of the Jews. They have always backstabbed everyone who has taken pity on them and made the fatal error of giving them shelter. And it is this cruel, ungrateful backstabbing of the Jews that has caused them to be mercilessly expelled from wherever they gain strength. This why Holocausts keep happening to them repeatedly. If they would only learn to be grateful and change their behavior." She later claimed she was not against all Israeli Americans. Trial proceedings. After 18 months of detention, Siddiqui's trial began in New York City on January 19, 2010. Prior to the jury entering the courtroom, Siddiqui told onlookers that she would not work with her lawyers because the trial was a sham. She also said, "I have information about attacks, more than 9/11s. I want to help the president to end this group, to finish them. They are a domestic, U.S. group, they are not Muslim." 9 government witnesses were called by the prosecution. Army Captain Robert Snyder, John Threadcraft, a former Army officer, and FBI agent John Jefferson testified first. As Snyder testified that Siddiqui had been arrested with a handwritten note outlining plans to attack various U.S. sites, she interjected, "Since I'll never get a chance to speak. If you were in a secret prison, or your children were tortured, give me a little credit, this is not a list of targets against New York. I was never planning to bomb it. You're lying." The court also heard from FBI agent John Jefferson and Ahmed Gul, an Army interpreter, who recounted their struggle with her. The judge disallowed as evidence her possession of chemicals and terror manuals and her alleged ties to Al-Qaeda because they could have created an inappropriate bias. Her defense argued that there was no forensic evidence that the rifle was fired in the interrogation room. They noted the 9 government witnesses offered conflicting accounts of how many people were in the room, where they were positioned and how many shots were fired. It said that her handbag contents were not credible as evidence because they were sloppily handled. The prosecution argued that it was not unusual to fail to get fingerprints off a gun. This is a crime that was committed in a war zone, a chaotic and uncontrolled environment 6,000 miles away from here. Gul's testimony appeared, according to the defense, to differ from that given by Snyder with regard to whether Siddiqui was standing or on her knees as she fired the rifle. When Siddiqui testified, she admitted trying to escape, but said she had not taken the rifle or fired any shots. She said she had been tortured in secret prisons before her arrest by a group of people pretending to be Americans, doing bad things in America's name. Siddiqui insisted on testifying at the trial against the advice of her lawyers. According to at least one source, Siddiqui avoided the question of where she had been for the last 5 years, and her replies under cross-examination may have damaged her credibility in jurists' eyes. In answer to prosecutors' questions, she stated that the documents in her bag on terror plans and weapons had been given to her, and that she did not know that the boy who was with her in Ghazni was her son. When it was pointed out that the documents in her bag were in her own handwriting, she stated in a vague and halting manner that she had been forced to copy them out of a magazine so that her children would not be tortured. When questioned about taking a firearms course, she stated that everyone used to take it. The pistol safety instructor then testified that he remembered teaching her how to fire hundreds of rounds. In his closing arguments, the prosecutor told the jury that Siddiqui had raised her right hand and lied to your face. During the trial, Siddiqui was removed from the court several times for repeatedly interrupting the proceedings with shouting. On being ejected, she was told by the judge that she could watch the proceedings on closed-circuit television in an adjacent holding cell. A request by the defense lawyers to declare a mistrial was turned down by the judge. Amnesty International monitored the trial for fairness. Conviction. The trial lasted 14 days with the jury deliberating for 3 days before reaching a verdict. On February 3, 2010, Siddiqui was found guilty of 2 counts of attempted murder, armed assault, using and carrying a firearm, and 3 counts of assault on U.S. officers and employees. After jurors found Siddiqui guilty, she exclaimed, "This is a verdict coming from Israel, not America. That's where the anger belongs." She faced a minimum sentence of 30 years and a maximum of life in prison on the firearm charge, and could also have received a sentence of up to 20 years for each attempted murder and armed assault charge, and up to 8 years on each of the remaining assault counts. Her lawyers requested a 12-year sentence, instead of the life sentence recommended by the probation office. They argued that mental illness drove her actions when she attempted to escape from the Afghan National Police Station by any means available, what she viewed as a horrific fate. Her lawyers also claimed her mental illness was on display during her trial outbursts and boycotts, and that she was first and foremost the victim of her own irrational behavior. The sentencing hearing set to take place on May 6, 2010 was rescheduled for mid-August 2010 and then September 2010. Sentencing. Siddiqui was sentenced to 86 years in prison by Judge Berman on September 23, 2010. During the sentencing hearing, which lasted 1 hour, Siddiqui spoke on her own behalf. Upon hearing the verdict, she turned to trial spectators and told them that this verdict coming from Israel and not from America. A New York Times reporter wrote that at times during the hearing Judge Berman seemed to be speaking to an audience beyond the courtroom in an apparent attempt to address widespread speculation about Siddiqui and her case. He gave as an example a reference to the 5-year period before her 2008 arrest of Siddiqui's disappearance and claims of torture, where the judge said, "I am aware of no evidence in the record to substantiate these allegations or to establish them as fact. There is no credible evidence in the record that the United States officials and/or agencies detained Dr. Siddiqui. At the time of sentencing, Siddiqui did not show any interest in filing an appeal, instead saying, 'I appeal to God and He hears me.' After she was sentenced, she urged forgiveness and asked the public not to take any action in retaliation. She stated, 'Forgive everybody in my case, please. Don't get angry. If I'm not angry, why should anyone else be?' In a notably gracious exchange between the bestower and recipient of an 80-plus-year sentence of incarceration, the judge wished her the very best going forward, and both Siddiqui and the judge thanked each other. Imprisonment. Siddiqui was originally held at Metropolitan Detention Center, Brooklyn. She is now being held in Federal Medical Center, Carswell in Fort Worth, Texas, a federal prison for female inmates with special mental health needs, and also relatively close to the home of her brother Ali Siddiqui. Her release date is May 7, 2082. In July 2019, while visiting Washington, D.C., Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan suggested Siddiqui should be exchanged for Shakil Afridi, a Pakistani doctor accused of helping the Americans confirm the identity of Osama bin Laden, in advance of the raid where he was killed. Children. Siddiqui's son Ahmed was released from Afghanistan to his aunt in Pakistan following enormous outcry from the Pakistani public and politicians. While Pakistani law would normally give his father custody, his father did not want to fight the passionate public opinion supporting his aunt Fauzia. He now lives with his aunt in Karachi, who has prohibited him from talking to the press. In April 2010, Pakistan Interior Minister Rehman Malik claimed a 12-year-old girl found outside a house in Karachi was identified by DNA as Siddiqui's daughter, Maryam, and that she had been returned to her family. Their father and his parents have not been allowed to see either child. Reactions. attacks, threats, and exchange offers. For Al-Qaeda and Pakistani jihadi groups, Siddiqui's case became a rallying cry, and they joined in accusing the Pakistani government and military of failing to protect and avenge her. According to a video released by Hakeemullah Mirsad, head of the TTP at the time, the 2009 Camp Chapman attack in Afghanistan that killed 7 CIA officers was partly in revenge for Aafia's imprisonment. The 2010 Times Square car bombing attempt occurred one day after Mirsad released another video promising to avenge Siddiqui. The perpetrator of the attempt was Faisal Shahzad, a recently naturalized Pakistan-born citizen who had contacts with Jaish-e-Mohammed and Hakeemullah Mirsad. According to a February 2010 report in the Pakistani newspaper The News International, the Taliban threatened to execute U.S. soldier Bo Bergdahl, whom they had captured on June 30, 2009 in retaliation for Siddiqui's conviction. A Taliban spokesperson claimed that members of Siddiqui's family had requested help from the Taliban to obtain her release from prison in the U.S. Bergdahl was released on May 31, 2014 in exchange for 5 Guantanamo Bay detainees. In September 2010, the Taliban kidnapped Linda Norgrove, a Scottish aid worker in Afghanistan, and Taliban commanders insisted Norgrove would be handed over only in exchange for Siddiqui. On October 8, 2010, Norgrove was accidentally killed during a rescue attempt by a grenade thrown by one of her rescuers. In July 2011, then deputy of the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, Walia Rehman, announced that they wanted to swap Siddiqui for 2 Swiss citizens abducted in Balochistan. The Swiss couple escaped in March 2012. In December 2011, Al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri demanded the release of Siddiqui in exchange for Warren Weinstein, an American aid worker kidnapped in Pakistan on August 13, 2011. Weinstein was accidentally killed in a drone strike in January 2015. In January 2013, Al-Qaeda-linked terrorists involved in the Algerian In Amenas hostage crisis listed the release of Siddiqui as one of their demands. In June 2013, the captors of 2 Czech women kidnapped in Pakistan demanded the release of Siddiqui in exchange for the 2 captives. Both Czech women were released in March 2015. Following intense negotiations by a Turkish NGO IHH. In August 2014, it was reported that the terrorist who claimed responsibility for the beheading of U.S. photojournalist James Foley mentioned Siddiqui in an email to Foley's family. Siddiqui was identified in the email as one of the Muslim sisters the Islamic State was purportedly willing to swap as part of a prisoner exchange with the United States. In February 2015, Paul Gosar said the family of Kayla Mueller had been told plans to swap her for Siddiqui were underway in the months before her death. ISIS had also demanded $6.6 million in exchange for Mueller. In March 2017, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula leader Qasim al-Raymi said that his group demanded the release of Siddiqui in exchange for Luke Summers, an American journalist kidnapped in Yemen in September 2013. Summers was killed during a rescue attempt in December 2014. In January 2022, a man claiming to be Siddiqui's brother took hostages at the Beth Israel Synagogue in Colleyville, Texas, near where she is imprisoned, and demanded her release. He was later shot and killed by police, and the hostages were rescued. Pakistan. The case was covered very differently in Pakistan than in the United States. After Siddiqui's conviction, she sent a message through her lawyer, saying that she does not want violent protests or violent reprisals in Pakistan over this verdict. Thousands of students, political and social activists protested in Pakistan. Some shouted anti-American slogans, while burning the American flag and effigies of President Barack Obama in the streets. Her sister has spoken frequently and passionately on her behalf at rallies. Echoing her family's comments and anti-US sentiment, many believe she was detained in Karachi in 2003, held at the US Bagram Air Base and tortured, and that the charges against her were fabricated. In August 2009, Pakistani Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani met with Siddiqui's sister at his residence and assured her that Pakistan would seek Siddiqui's release from the US. The Pakistani government paid $2 million for the services of 3 lawyers to assist in the defense of Siddiqui during her trial. Many Siddiqui supporters were present during the proceedings, and outside the court dozens of people rallied to demand her release. Her conviction was followed with expressions of support by many Pakistanis, who appeared increasingly anti-American, as well as by politicians and the news media, who characterized her as a symbol of victimization by the United States. Graffiti-free Dr. Aafia appeared even in remote areas of the country. The Pakistani embassy in Washington, D.C., expressed its dismay over the verdict, which followed intense diplomatic and legal efforts on her behalf. Will consult the family of Dr. Aafia Siddiqui and the team of defense lawyers to determine the future course of action. Prime Minister Gilani described Siddiqui as a daughter of the nation, and opposition leader Nawaz Sharif promised to push for her release. On February 18, President Asif Ali Zardari requested of Richard Holbrooke, U.S. Special Envoy to Afghanistan and Pakistan, that the U.S. consider repatriating Siddiqui to Pakistan under the Pakistan-US Prisoner Exchange Agreement. On February 22, the Pakistani Senate urged the government to work towards her immediate release. Shireen Mazari, editor of the Pakistani newspaper The Nation, wrote that the verdict did not really surprise anyone familiar with the vindictive mindset of the U.S. public. Post 9/11. In September 2010, Pakistan Interior Minister Rehman Malik sent a letter to the United States Attorney General calling for repatriation of Siddiqui to Pakistan. He said that the case of Siddiqui had become a matter of public concern in Pakistan and her repatriation would create goodwill for the USA. Few Pakistanis questioned the outpouring of support. Her ex-husband said Siddiqui was reaping the fruit of her own decision. Her family has been portraying Aafia as a victim. We would like the truth to come out. Shakil Chaudhry lamented the mass hysteria of supporters. But when one columnist raised questions about Aafia's sister Fauzia's account, graffiti appeared all over Karachi insulting him. US observers noted the Pakistani reaction. Jessica Eve Stern, a terrorism specialist and lecturer at Harvard Law School, observed, "Whatever the truth is, this case is of great political importance because of how people view her." Foreign Policy reported that unsubstantiated rumors, widely repeated in the Pakistani press, that she had been sexually abused by her captors had become part of the legend that surrounds her, so much so that they are repeated as established facts by her supporters, who have helped build her iconic status as a folk hero. According to the New York Times, there is no doubt that the case of an ultra-conservative, educated middle-class Pakistani woman who shunned the ways of the West and defied America has resonated with the Pakistani public. All of this has taken place with little national soul-searching about the contradictory and frequently damning circumstances surrounding Ms. Siddiqui, who is suspected of having had links to Al-Qaeda and the banned jihadi group Jaish-e-Mohammed. Instead, the Pakistani news media have broadly portrayed her trial as a farce, and an example of the injustices meted out to Muslims by the United States since September 11, 2001. Journalist Scroggins complained about the lack of curiosity and investigation by Pakistani public and press of a number of questions about the case: how Siddiqui's daughter Maryam turned up at her grandmother's house and where she had been, what connection the Karachi Institute of Technology, and the cleric Abu Lubaba had with Aafia. She noted that while thousands of Pakistanis had been killed by bomb and assassinations in tribal areas, in contrast to the rage against the U.S., no rallies were held in protest of jihadi attacks because Pakistanis were fearful of them. See also: Anti-American sentiment in Pakistan. References.